Good evening. Our lecture for today is carbohydrates. So, the learning objectives of our lecture for today is to define energy and understand energy balance, describe the function of simple and complex carbohydrates. The third objective is to discuss the health effects of carbohydrate, define glycemic index, and lastly, identify the types and some of the benefits of fibers. Energy is the ability to perform work, produce change, and maintain life. Energy exists in many forms, like mechanical, chemical, thermal, electrical, light, and nuclear. Each type can be converted from one form to another. In the body, chemical energy from food is converted to mechanical energy and heat. The major dietary sources of energy yielding are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. We have to know some important definitions in concern with energy. First of them is calorie, which is the basic unit of energy and is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius at standard temperature, but because the calorie is a small unit, we usually use kilocalorie, which is equal to 1000 calories. And it is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of a kilogram of water 1 degree Celsius. Another unit for energy is joule, which is the work done or the energy expended when 1 kilogram is moved for 1 meter by a force of 1 Newton. In the normal body, there must be a state of equilibrium or what is called energy balance. That means energy in equals to energy out, or in other words, the energy intake per 24 hours equal to energy expenditure. So, any defect in this equilibrium or state of balance will lead either to release of fat from adipose tissue or storage of fat in the adipose tissues. When the energy intake is inadequate, that means negative energy balance, lead to decrease in the body weight due to release of fat from the adipose tissue. But when there is excess energy intake, that means positive energy balance, this will lead to storage of fat to the adipose tissue and resulting in increase in the body weight. The total calorie content of food can be measured by a device called pump calorimeter. This device is designed to burn food. The amount of energy produced per gram of protein, fat, or carbohydrates by pump calorimeter are: 1 gram of protein produces 4 kilocalories, while 1 gram of fat produces 9 kilocalories. 1 gram of carbohydrates produces 4 kilocalories. Usually, the food content of protein, carbohydrates, fat are taken from food composition, what is called the food composition tables. We can calculate the amount of energy released from 2 eggs, which is equal to 100 gram, since the protein constitutes 13% of the 100 gram of eggs. As we said before, the 1 gram of protein produces 4 kilocalories. And when we multiply the 13 gram by 4 kilocalorie, we can obtain the amount of energy from protein in 100 gram of eggs. The 100 gram of eggs contains 12% of fat. And as we mentioned before, the 1 gram of fat produces a 9 kilocalorie. So the amount of energy released from fat in 100 gram of eggs is 108 kilocalorie. In the same way, we can calculate the amount of energy released from 1% of carbohydrate in 100 gram of eggs. So the summation of energy released from a protein, fat, and carbohydrates in this 100 gram of eggs is 164 kilocalorie. In the same way, we can calculate the amount of energy released from 100 gram of bread. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are organic compounds consist of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbohydrates consist of starch and sugar. They are rich food in their natural state because they are low in calories and high in fibers. The main sources of carbohydrates are cereals like bread, pasta, and rice, grains like lentils, chickpeas, beans, and fava beans. Fruit and vegetables are one of the sources of carbohydrates. Also, sugars like candy, sweets, and soft drinks. What are the simple and complex carbohydrates? This figure illustrates the major types of carbohydrates, which are 2 types: simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates, it is of 2 forms: monosaccharides and disaccharides. The complex carbohydrates are also of 2 types: polysaccharides and fibers. Although I'm sure you have a good information about carbohydrates from your biochemistry lectures, but we have to refresh your information regarding the classification of carbohydrates. As we said before, the carbohydrates is of 2 main types: the simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. And the simple carbohydrates also is of 2 forms: the monosaccharides and disaccharides. Monosaccharides, simple sugars, it is the simplest form of sugar and the most basic unit of carbohydrate. It is the great source of quick energy and cannot be hydrolyzed to simpler compound. It includes glucose, which is the grape sugar, fructose, fruit sugar, galactose and mannose, milk sugar, which not occur in free form in the food. Monosaccharide is the building block of another type or form of carbohydrates, which is the disaccharide. Disaccharide is the second form of simple carbohydrates, and the disaccharide molecule formed when two monosaccharides are joined by glycosidic linkage or bond. Disaccharides present in three forms. First one is sucrose, which is the table sugar, and it is present in cane, beet sugar, and molasses. It is resulted from the linkage between glucose molecule and the fructose molecule. Lactose is another form of disaccharide, which is the milk sugar, and it is resulted from the linkage between glucose molecule and galactose molecule. And it is present in milk and dairy products. While maltose, malt sugar, it is resulted from the linkage between two molecules of glucose. Polysaccharides are complex carbohydrates, and polysaccharides have two forms, the digestible form and indigestible form. The digestible form of two types: starch, which represent the plant source of polysaccharide. It is found in cereals, bread, rice, oatmeal, whole grains, peas, and beans. While glycogen represents the animal source of polysaccharide, and it is stored in the muscle and liver. It is found in meat products and seafood. The second form of complex carbohydrates is the indigestible dietary fibers. These substances have affinity for water, forming bulk and lead to slow gastric emptying time and may bind to bile acids. They are not digested by GIT enzymes and may be divided into, first, a soluble form like pectin and gum, and insoluble forms cellulose and hemicellulose. Bran cereals are the most concentrated fiber source, providing 6 to 13 grams of fibers per serving. Cellulose found in vegetable leaves and seeds covering. Hemicellulose also found in vegetable leaves and seed covering, and it is used as a laxative and increase the feeling of satiety. Pectin found in fruit, jams, and jellies. It absorbs water to form gels. Gums found in plant secretion and seeds. What is the importance of carbohydrates? First, it is the major and cheapest source of energy, so it is the major source of food for the people. Number 2, protein sparing action. Number 3, anti-ketogenic action. When there is a decrease in the carbohydrate intake, this will lead to lipolysis and increase the fat, ketone bodies, and sodium, resulted in acidosis and dehydration. Number 4, role in the activity of nervous tissues, since they are the only source of energy for the brain. Number 5, the beneficial effect of dietary fibers. Number 6, lactose affects the bacterial growth in the large bowel, lead to laxative effect, and the synthesis of vitamin K in large intestine increases. Number 7, role of glucuronic acid, which is a metabolite of glucose, act in the liver to combine with the chemical and bacterial toxins to form substances that can be excreted outside. Number 8, carbohydrates and their derivatives serve as precursors for the production of nucleic acid, connective tissue matrix, and galactosides of the nervous tissues. What is the recommended intake of carbohydrates? The minimum amount of carbohydrates is 50 to 100 grams per day to meet the glucose needs and prevent ketosis. Total carbohydrates should constitute about 55 to 60% of the total energy intake. The refined sugar should be limited to 5 to 10%. Also, one of the recommendations is to increase the dietary fiber intake to at least 25 to 35 grams per day. Fiber intake should consist equal amount of soluble and insoluble fibers. So, the recommended intake of carbohydrate is 5 servings of vegetable and fruit and 6 servings of whole grains, cereals, and legumes. So, we have to know the adverse effects of sugar. In general, the sugar should be consumed in a moderate amount, but the overconsumption of sugar leads to first nutrient displacement, which is the major health problem because of losing the important nutrients replaced by empty energy food. Number 2, dental caries. Eating concentrated sweets and sticky carbohydrates support bacterial growth and leading to plaque formation and tooth decay. Number 3, obesity. Since the intake of high calories lead to storage of energy as fat. Risk of development of diabetes mellitus type 2. Since there is a strong relationship between obesity and diabetes. Number 5, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorders. In children who increase the sugar intake, these foods possibly cause altered behaviors. Glycemic index. Glycemic index is an important term we have to focus on when we try to discuss the subject of carbohydrates. What is the glycemic index? Glycemic index is the scale to show the effects of different carbs on the body blood sugar level. The glycemic index uses the glucose as the standard measure. The glycemic index scale is equal to 100. Food with a score of 70 and more have a high glycemic index, while the food with a score of 55 to 69 categorized as a medium glycemic index food. Food with a score of 54 and less have low glycemic index, Lower score means healthier food. This table shows the glycemic index of each food item. As we said before, the lower score means healthier food. When we talk about glycemic index and carbohydrates, we have to throw a light on what is called the glycemic roller coaster. Since the intake of too many calories from carb will lead to high blood glucose level or blood glucose level spike and release large amount of insulin. This will lead to a drop or a crash in the blood glucose level, in addition to a storage of fat, since the insulin hormone, as you know, is a fat storage hormone, and also lead to blood sugars drop, resulting in burning muscle and holds on fat. So energy crashes lead to increased craving, fatigue, mental fog, and irritability. So the intake of high glycemic index food will repeat this process or this cycle again. So skipping meals and eating too much sugar takes you on the blood sugar roller coaster. But the balanced eating keeps your blood sugar stable all day. What is the importance of dietary fibers? First, prevent constipation by normalizing the intestinal transient time, which is the time of contact of food particles to the wall of the colon, and also by increase the fecal bulk. Its role in cardiovascular system by reducing the cholesterol when give large amount of soluble fiber. This is achieved by three mechanisms: binding to the bile salt and cholesterol, prevent reabsorption, increasing the fecal bulk lead to reduce the exposure of bile salt to mucosal cells, and also the bacteria in the colon reduce the soluble fibers to short chain fatty acids, which block the cholesterol synthesis in the liver. Number 4, role in diabetic patients. The water-soluble fibers play a hypoglycemic role by affecting the glycemic index of food and by delay the gastric emptying time and shortening the intestinal transient time and reduce glucose absorption. In addition to slow starch hydrolysis lead to decrease the glucose absorption. Number 4, protective role against the CA colon by decrease the concentration of carcinogen, reducing the transient time and affect the production of bile acids. Number 5, stimulate chewing, saliva flow, gastric juice, which is the beneficial effect on digestion. Number 6, beneficial role in the management of obesity, filling the stomach and providing a sense of satiety, delay the gastric emptying and slow the rate of digestion and absorption of nutrients. Number 7, prevention of diverticulitis. But you have put in your mind that excessive fiber intake may interfere with the absorption of calcium and zinc, especially in children and elderly. Thank you very much for your listening and your attention.